So the whole point was to get to Moscow within about 2-3 days we had, and after stories of border crossings that took 3-4 days, we did pretty well. We got there 2 hours before Neil arrived, and we had the next day a interview on Russia Today, primetime Russian TV. Where we had to be all prim and proper, apparently. But the guys there that were from the TV channel, they wanted to show us around that night as well. So they took us out on the town, and we went out that night, and I ended up with a whole bunch of friends that I'd made, and the guys left me with them. All I knew was the name of the hostel that we were staying at, Godzilla Hostel. And so at about 6 a.m, I realized my phone's dead. I only know the name. Turned out I was about 5 k's away, and no one was actually very helpful in getting there. And I walked around for about 6 hours, going to banks, police, taxi drivers, you name it, street vendors, street beggars, just speaking to everyone. And basically I ended up finding a taxi driver who had a laptop, and we looked it up, and he found the address, and we got there. So I walk in at about, midday, and the guys are like, "Where the hell have you been?" I'm like, "Why the hell did you leave me alone?" Right? And anyway, had about 40 minutes kip, and then went straight to the interview, and I had a wonderful time with Lindsay Free, who was our interviewer.
Today I'm joined by 3 participants of the Mongol rally. They've named their group Traveling Naked, and they're setting out on a journey to provide medical supplies and an ambulance to Mongolia by driving all the way there from London. Adalbert Hutter, Dylan Thompson, and Neil Waldron, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Where did this ambulance come from? How did you acquire it?
So we're based in Sydney, Australia. So we started looking around online, and we found an ambulance broker called UK Ambulance Sales, and they deal in selling used frontline ambulances. So this was actually used by a clinic in the UK.
Now I understand it's your first time making this trip, so are you nervous, and what kind of hardships do you anticipate along the way?
No, I wouldn't say we're nervous about the journey. It's really important to us that the ambulance makes it there in one piece. So we've done a few things to the ambulance to help reinforce it. So we've put some armor plating underneath the vehicle, things like that. But it's not a matter of if something's going to happen, it's when something's going to happen, and hopefully we're well enough prepared to take care of it when it does come up.
How long will the journey from Moscow to Mongolia be?
It should be about 6 weeks. It's about 18,000 kilometers. We've done around about 4,000 so far, so we've got a fair bit to go still, but plan to get there.
Tell me a little bit about the terrain you're expecting to go through, because I imagine it's not all paved roads and street signs.
No, it's already been a bumpy ride with lots of potholes, and we're expecting tough terrain through the desert, which we've heard, people losing wheels and axles and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be a challenge, but we'll get through.
Tell me about the 2 charities that are benefiting directly from this journey.
So Lotus Child is the orphanage based in Mongolia, and the other one, Act for Peace. They're a global not-for-profit organisation, and we are in touch with the Sydney-based branch, and they help empower war-torn communities to make sustainable growth for the future.
Now I understand it can actually take quite a while to reach a hospital in Mongolia because of their shortage of ambulances. Can you elaborate a little bit on that so our viewers understand the real situation there?
I think Mongolia is a country that is booming in certain ways in the west of the country with mining, but it's still very much trying to catch up from an infrastructure and kind of health perspective. So absolutely this ambulance will go directly to an organisation that will make use of it straight away.
And the guys there, they were just incredible. Ivor and Mariana and Dosko Mick, who's a great character. So we did that, and then they showed us around Red Square, took us out again that night, and it was just, the people there were just phenomenal, and we can't thank them enough. We were just so amazed by their generosity and of time, as well as just showing us around the sites and making things happen, like getting us the interview with Russia Today. So it was quite the experience. And then from Moscow, we left there with Neil, full team complete, and we headed down to Uralsk in Kazakhstan. Crossed the Kazakhstan border, met another team there, did a little bit of a convoy, because there was another night crossing, obviously. don't know why, it just ended up that way. We met these Brits, and we convoyed with them and slept in what was meant to be a camping area. It turned out to be a very small shoulder of a road, so we all fell asleep there, and they actually had to leave early, and we left that a little bit later, about 10 or so that day, and headed off towards Astana. And the roads along the way were absolutely shocking, full of potholes, just absolute nightmare basically. Some of the worst roads we saw were probably Kazakhstan and then Mongolia. Anyway, we got to Astana, and that was quite beautiful, and went down to they were very clean cities. It was quite strange. You'd go through these really big expanses of open plains, almost desert-like. There's pretty much nothing around. And then you got to these big cities that were just very clean, well established, orderly, and you'd go through them, and we had a good time there. And so yeah, we were in Kazakhstan, and as I said, the roads were absolutely terrible, and we were driving along, we hit a pothole, and we just lost all power, and we basically rolled to a stop, and we're like, oh no, what's going on? We just took it on the chin. We got out, we had a look, we're looking for leaks, we're looking at what could have been damaged, and we figured out that the fuel filter probably had a lot of junk in it, and it's been clogged up. So we managed to knock it around, and sure enough, we managed to undo whatever was blocking it, and we were back on the road fairly quickly. But it meant for us that we wanted to have it looked at and serviced. So we stopped off at a mechanic, and while they were looking at it, there were all these kids running around, and I was doing card tricks and playing guitar for them, and then we saw them at this water pump, and they were getting ice cold water, which we didn't dare drink, but it was great to be able to put your head under and fill a few. We had a few emergency bottles, more for the car, utility water basically. And anyway, so we had a good time with the kids playing as they climbed all over this water pump. Anyway, the people there were absolutely lovely, almost to extremes. Like, they'd come up and try and give you a whole bunch of stuff, including one guy gave Adalbert his Casio watch, which he said he had to wear around Kazakhstan with pride. He came up, he's like, I love Americans, Adele was like, I'm Australian. That's great, we love Americans. And he's like, here, wear my Casio watch. So he did, and then that turned into a bit of an altercation, because someone else, who was a separate group, came up to that guy and said, you should get something for your watch. Give him your picture phone. We're like, we're going to go and get some money for you, because it started to get really intense, and that kind of chilled them out. But we walked away, and then they just started into a brawl, so we were out of there and had to escape. But apart from that, people were just absolutely heartwarming. We camped out a fair bit, and that often resulted into getting into a town or just the outskirts of a town very late at night. Roughly around 2 a.m. was our standard, and we'd be looking around and try to find a place to park the car safely. That often resulted in police coming up and slamming their fists on the door, to which there was one night in particular, after Adalbert had been given the Casio watch, this bright light shines through the front, and we had been taking turns, so two sleep on the stretchers in the back, and then another one sleeps up the front across the two chairs with a couple of tubs built up in between the pillow and that to balance it out. And it's not very comfortable. Anyway, this bright light came through, and this slamming, and Adalbert just thought it was like the gypsies or something nearby, so he's like, get lost, yelling at them. And suddenly the light kind of turns from being flashed in your eyes, and this bright black badge appears. We're like, uh-oh. So it's like, military. This military officer comes around, and he's like, open the door. Adalbert gets out, and he's talking to them. He's like, what are you guys doing, basically, in some kind of Kazakhstani phrase, and Adele was like, sleep, I just want to sleep. He's like, oh, okay, fine, get back in, go to sleep, good night. So apparently the international symbol to get out of anything is just sleep. So it worked for us once, hopefully it'll work again some stage. Then went to Almaty and met a few more teams, and actually met an American team that we went out with, and they were at the finish line when we were, because there were 3 stages to the finish line. I think they're about 3 weeks apart basically, and it all depended on whether people had to get back for work or the route that they took and that kind of stuff. So you would see teams that you'd meet along the way, and some of them you wouldn't, but we met up with these American guys, and they were just like, it's the Aussies! Mind you, there were about 4 Aussie teams on the trip, but they're like, it's the Aussies, these guys are incredible, and they just raved about us to everyone. So we had an amazing night with them in Almaty. We were leaving Kazakhstan, or on the last leg, on our way up to the Russian border crossing towards Novosibirsk, which is basically like a mini Moscow in Siberia. And we lost our convoy. We'd met these great Brit guys, and they're actually trained to be basically like the guys from Top Gun, fighter jet pilots, and fantastic guys, Will, Rob, and James. And the diet for the trip was pretty much pot noodles and salami, cheese, Tabasco, and tomato on bread sandwiches. So that was pretty much our staple diet, apart from when we would eat out and get a few different meals in between. But while we were on the road, we'd often make coffee as we were driving along, or pull over and we'd have our sandwiches and cook our pot noodles and that kind of thing. Somewhere along the line we consumed some of the water. We think it was from brushing our teeth and that kind of thing. And there are quite a lot of tummy bugs in that water. So there was a period in Kazakhstan where in 45-degree heat, and one after the other, over 3 days, we got knocked out. So one of us would be lying on the stretcher with a fever and in pains and hallucinating, and the other 2 would be taking care of them. So that was a bit of a down point for the trip, but we got past it and we looked after each other. So we come off the new paved road onto this pothole filled crater, and we went over a bump, and that bump turned out to be a really big mound that was really, really soft sand, and the whole thing got wedged and just stuck. So we're like, oh great, here we go again. Jump out, or go to get the shovel out, and got the shovel and shut the door. The sliding door just falls off at the same time. We're like, what else could go wrong, right? And we turn around, and Neil's thrown up on the side of the road, and then I had the tummy bug, so I had to run off. And anyway, we come back, and we managed to dig it out a bit, and another team pulled up, and they managed to tow us off after about 5-6 guys pushing on the back, this car pulling from the front, and Dubs was in the front trying to guide it out. We got it off the mound, and we had to head up to Semi, which was the closest town. And we were crossing into Semi, and there was a police border patrol, and they pull us over. We're like, why? What? We weren't speeding. What's going on? Obviously it's a door that's not on, and so they pull us over. They're yelling at us and everything. He's trying to move the door. We had to get the camera out, play the tape, and show him what had happened. He's like, oh, okay, right. There are ratchet straps everywhere, and he sees through the crack, he sees Neil lying down. He's like, what about him? He's not moving. He's like, pulse, no pulse, no pulse. We're like, Neil, wake up. Neil's like, what? He's like, oh, okay. He thought Neil was dead. So we convinced them of everything. We had to give them a koala to stop them fining us from a make-believe speeding fine, and the door not being on. It's just a door, right?